Are we live? I don't know. I'm going to start the countdown. Hey everyone, welcome to the Metal Geeks podcast. I am one of your co-hosts. I am Carrie the Metal Geek, along with
Brutal Dave here. How's it going?
Good sir. And we also have
Justin the Metal Detector. I'm back.
Thank you, man. And we have a very, very fucking special guest tonight, Riley McShane, Allegaeon. We are so excited to have you here, man.
Thanks, man. Happy to be aboard.
Yeah, we are. As you know, our name is Metal Geeks. We are total metalheads, but we're total geeks too. So anything you want to geek out tonight, this is your platform, man. Do whatever you want.
Hell yeah, man. So you're going to get me going down a rabbit hole of all the different Final Fantasies and why they're all special and why they're
why we roll.
Why other JRPG series are inferior even though they have more titles and why anyway.
We've already jumped into it. Let's talk about first of all, I want to talk about we lost somebody very special in the metal scene this week. LG Petrov, Entombed. He was a young guy. I've seen different reports. He was 47 or 49, but still way too young to go. All I gotta say is fuck cancer. I unfortunately never got a chance to see them live. I was on my way. Yeah, I was on my way to.
I saw them once a couple of years ago.
Did you?
Yeah.
I was on my way to see them live right after high school. That's when I got into a car accident. So, yeah, it sucked.
Brutal. James McGaw from Magma also died just like within the past couple days.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Heard that.
Man.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Which is a bummer. Big old bummer. I'm not sure if he was still in the band. I think he might have been an ex-member, but he worked on some of their like really good stuff. Yep. It's been a rough week for metal.
Yeah, it really has.
Yeah.
I listened to a shit ton of Entombed and Entombed AD and some Nihilist yesterday, just all day in my head, paying tribute.
Oh yeah. Well, at least he's got lots of other rockin' musicians on the other side, so there's that.
Yeah, I can just imagine the band they're going to start together.
Yeah, right. Man, I feel like it's crazy. As a lot of the older generation, and even not the not so older generation, you know what I mean? Like when Eddie Van Halen, right? Didn't he just die recently? When he died,
a few months ago,
it was like okay, like I kind of get that. He's a much older dude. Like, it's still a bummer, but like he contributed to his like he served his place in time, right? Like he was like an absolute guitar legend. Like he innovated so many different things, and then he got old and died. Like that's just kind of what happens. Like it's a bummer, but but it's super sad to see some of these dudes who are like just way too young. This guy from Entombed, and then like Alexi Laiho recently as well,
and Riley Gale.
Yeah, that was a bummer. That was a major bummer. It's weird, man. It's like when I see those older generation guys go, I'm kind of just like, it's sad, but like whatever. But it's always a lot tougher when these dudes who are like under 50, sometimes under 40.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, it's brutal. But
I mean, you got to imagine now. I mean, because all the bands that I grew up on in the mid '80s to early '90s are probably still kicking it out there, but they're in their 50s, 60s by now. You just got to think, how long are they going to be doing it? How long? I mean, it's a scary thing. I mean, Bruce Dickinson had cancer. A lot of people, they're getting older, and it's not going to last forever.
Yep.
That's why all the new bands need to, really start. All these old folks need to start listening to newer bands so they can, I hate that shit. It's like, oh, I don't listen to anything past 1992. I'm like, come on.
Isn't it crazy to think that 1992 was almost 30 years ago?
Yeah.
People like that, man. I'm like, man, if the only bands you listen to can all like legally go buy like beers and drink together, you gotta like
Right.
get with it a little bit. Like,
Support or abort. Come on, man.
I mean, those people need their own like metal oldie station.
oh man, dude, that would be so good.
Classic metal station. I mean, we're almost there, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear songs from like the late '90s, early 2000s on like classic rock radio, and I'm just like, why is this happening? This can't be happening.
I hear shit that I grew up on in the grocery store.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh my god, now I feel really old.
I feel like this is one of those. I feel like that's a rite of passage in its own way. That's like
right.
That's like a marker that like you've attained a certain age group, which is when the oldie station is playing shit that I liked when I was a kid. Damn it!
When the oldie station went away and became stuff that came out when you were in high school, that means you're fucking old.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well,
I remember
bastards.
reaching the point where the distance between the present and Nirvana's Nevermind was longer than the distance between Nevermind and Led Zeppelin 4, and like that blew my mind. I remember that moment when we crossed over.
I don't know how old you are, Riley, but I mean, I'm in my late 40s. These guys are a little bit younger than me, so I've been there, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm 32. I'm going to be 33 this year, and
Wow.
yeah,
He's probably the youngest of all of us.
maybe, very well.
But the most successful, though.
Oh yeah, by far.
It's all a perception based thing. What is success, right?
So we can talk about it now that we've sort of set it up. First of all, man, congrats on all these Metal Blade Live interviews you've been doing.
Yeah.
The one was Devin last week, even though there was a little bit of like a glitch, it was so great.
Yeah, it was I usually don't like take much away from those interviews, right? You know what I mean? Like a lot it's we try to avoid doing like canned questions and answers type of thing. Like we talk about the things they're working on, things that they have in the works, just kind of as like a promotional tool, but most of the conversation most of the time is just us kind of like chopping it up, like going over industry stuff or like, what was it like to be around during this time and in the music industry and playing with all these bands and blah, blah, blah. And like, it's cool to hear these like anecdotal type of stories from a lot of these dudes. And it's, obviously cool to hear what kind of music they're working on, but I don't ever usually learn a whole lot. You know what I mean? Like most of it is stuff that like I've either experienced firsthand or have already kind of like been introduced to just from working in the music industry for so long. Like upwards of 10 years now. So, I remember one time I was interviewing Trevor from Black Dahlia, and he said something along the lines of like, there's no finish line on success. And that like really stuck with me because it's a really good, like way to view things. And I remember learning from that, but like I said, I don't usually take a lot away, but that Devin interview, man, it's so insightful. Like I took so much away from that interview, and like even it like forced me to look at like my creative process and like how I do things, when I'm working on something by myself versus with other people. Or,
yeah, for sure.
He said something that really stuck with me as well. He was like, I was working on this thing, and I noticed that like I was putting too much of myself into the music. And I thought that was brilliant because like it puts into words like a feeling that I've had for a really long time working on stuff where it's like I'll get this like surge of creative inspiration or whatever, and then kind of like I can like feel it dissolve in real time as I get further and further along in whatever it is that I'm working on. And I never really was able to like articulate why until last week when I was talking to Devin, and he was just like, I was just putting too much of myself into the music in that way. So yeah, very, very profound dude, man. He was definitely a treat to talk to for as long as I did, and patient as a fucking saint dealing with the technical issues that we were having. Yeah, my internet, for those of you watching this who also watched that, what happened is that like my internet service provider is garbage. Let's start with that. They're a company that like I used when I first moved back down to San Diego, and then immediately switched off of to the other ISP because they are awful. But then I moved again, And the neighborhood that I live in now is like, we're a Cox community. It's also called Cox. So
Ew, yeah, I have firsthand
I've had
experience.
Cox before.
Yeah.
They're terrible.
I've had Cox too. They're terrible. Yeah, no, that is.
Watch what you're saying, man.
Yeah, right. But yeah, it's like it's now I live in it's a Cox community, which basically means that they have like a monopoly on this
Yep.
neighborhood, and you can only use their service.
My neighborhood has the same thing with Comcast, and it sucks.
Yeah, exactly. And so what happens with them is like they'll just do these like random chokes on your upload speed. And so I pay for something that's like supposed to be like 30 megs up, which is great, right? It's like more upload speed than you would ever need. You could stream like 9 different live anythings in HD with that much. But at the time that I was doing that Devin interview, I was getting like 1.5, which is not great. So yeah, that's kind of what was going on there. Was we were dealing with tech issues because my upload speed was garbage. So I had to like lower the bit rate on my stream and do all kinds of fun stuff to make it watchable.
Today is the 1 year anniversary since Dave and I both seen a live show. That was Devin Townsend.
Yep.
Yeah, he was with a contortionist, right?
Yeah, Contortionist and Hiken.
Yeah. Ugh, such a good
That
Killer
was
show.
great show.
That was it. We're like the next day, it was like everything hit. We're like, oh shit, are we okay? Are we good?
Yeah, right.
Well, you remember Carrie that whole night that Devin was complaining
was sick.
about being sick, that
Yeah.
like, he was all and so like the day after all this shit drops and we're like, uh-oh.
Yeah, right. Is this just regular old tour AIDS, or does he
Right.
have the Rona? Fucking-
Yep.
Yeah, my second tour ever in 2011 was with this band called Wretched, and then my band Son of Aurelius. And opening the tour, it was only a 3-band package, was this band called Last Chance to Reason. Speaking of geek metal, oh man, if you haven't checked out Last Chance to Reason, at the time they were touring this album that they released called Level 2, and Mike Lassard, who is now the vocalist of The Contortionist, was the vocalist of that band at the time. And dude, so good. Like, even way back then, I was just like floored by how good of a vocalist this guy was. And I was like, man, this band is super awesome, but that vocalist is going places. And lo and behold, ends up in The Contortionist, almost immediately releases Language, which was like groundbreaking. And yeah, it was super cool being able to
drop the name of his previous band again. What was it?
Last Chance to Reason.
Last Chance to Reason. I'm adding it to my list to check out.
So it was so cool because they had this like Contra type video game
Oh, nice.
that they developed alongside the album. So you played this game to like the soundtrack, and so like the enemy spawns and like the boss movements and stuff like that all coincided, like power up drops and shit, all coincided with the music from the album. And so they just had this little like little laptop or TV monitor or something, I can't quite remember, that was just set up at merch every night, where you could just like walk up and go play this game with headphones on and like kind of experience the first couple levels.
It's pretty
I'm
cool.
pretty sure they
that's neat.
finished it and made it. I think they were like working with like an alpha demo
That's
when
awesome.
they had it on tour. But super cool band, bunch of super cool guys, and I think they released one more album after that, and then are kind of like in one of those weird permanent hiatus periods. Reasonably so, with what their vocalist is doing with the Contortionist.
So how did you? I know you're on the label, but how did you get involved with the live interview series?
It started off as like the Metal Blade podcast. So I guess that they had done, I want to say like 40 episodes with two of the guys who work for Metal Blade, this guy Vince Edwards, and then Ryan Williams, who played bass for Black Dahlia for a long time. Bart Williams. And they kind of called it because it's like things got too busy. And so when they decided they wanted to bring it back, they were like, well, let's have another host who's not a Metal Blade employee, so that, if we get busy bands, doing Metal Blade stuff, we have someone to kind of fall back on. And so we did a few episodes of the podcast, but as I'm sure you guys know, podcasts are a lot to like edit and stay on top of and post. And
Yeah.
they can run for hours and hours, and it's like kind of a longer thing than doing like a quick little live interview. So we did a few more episodes of the podcast, called it quits on that. And then they kind of were like, hey, what if we just switch this over to like a live streaming interview type of thing? And then you could just be the like sole host of it. And we'll just kind of like hang out in the shadows and feed you questions from fans and all this kind of stuff. And that's pretty much it. I think I've done like a dozen, maybe a little more at this point. And I've had some great talks with some people that I definitely never would have been able to talk to otherwise. Like,
Cool.
Doing Corpse Grinder and then Devin Townsend right next to each other.
Yeah, right.
Week after week, I was just like, well, I guess I can quit. Like,
I'm done. Another cool thing you've been doing is the D&D live streams. How did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, kind of a similar thing. Vince just reached out to me via email and was just like, hey, we're doing this, I think he reached out to me like November, maybe October, and was like, yeah, we're planning on doing like a D&D campaign if you want to be in it. I know you're a big old nerd. I was like, I sure am, and I sure am, and I sure am. So I just kind of signed up for that, and we got a little Discord chat going with the other people involved. Nico and Mark from Kardashev, and then Crow from Capra, and then Mario Infantes from Cult of Lilith, and then our DM Gisli Didrikson, who's just a personal friend of Mario's. They both live in Iceland, and we kind of just went from there. It had been like 15 years since I had played a D&D campaign. Longer than that. I want to say like 16, 18 years since I had played a D&D campaign. So there was definitely some rust to shake off and some adapting. I think when I was playing, it was still like third edition. Now we were playing like fifth edition standard and stuff, and I'm just like, man, I have no idea what's going on. There's so many changes.
Yeah,
I've been there.
And then doing everything digitally too. That was a trip. I did seeing that websites like D&D Beyond and Roll20.net exist. I was just like, this is so wild. So yeah, it was super cool, and I think that campaign is finished now, but I know there's another one in the works, and I don't know if any of the same people are going to be involved other than the DM. I think he's a keeper, but we'll see how it goes. I'm excited. Even if I'm not involved in the next one, I'm excited to see, maybe get to see it from the other side and see how my fellow metalheads role play and nerd out.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of fun to watch too, man.
Oh yeah.
Justin, did you had a couple questions you wanted to get to?
Well, I mean, I have questions mostly about the band.
Yeah, dude. Fire
So
them
he's in a
off.
band too?
Well, I mean, anybody listening to this should know Allegion. I know that Greg is a school teacher in his off time. Does anybody else in the band do anything for a day job, or are you all just full-time musicians?
Yes, pretty much everyone. Greg, so he doesn't teach like at a school, but he does teach full-time guitar teacher. He has a degree in classical guitar performance from the Cincinnati Conservatory of Music that he's had for a long time. And he puts it to good use. Teaches a lot of students in, far beyond the reaches of just metal guitar. So super cool that he's able to do that. A lot of people just kind of teach lessons, like teach on the side type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But he made it a full blown career that he has to take breaks from to tour, rather than okay, I have to, now that I'm off tour, I have to start, teaching and doing stuff to make ends meet. Our bass player is a sales representative for a beer and wine distributor up in Northern California. Up until very recently, our other guitar player, Mikey, was a manager of a pizza shop for years and years and years.
So you got the pizza and beer covered then.
Yeah, exactly. Our now old drummer, Brandon Park, worked doing farm stuff. He lives in very, very rural Illinois, down at the very southern tip of it, where it's a lot of agricultural stuff. So he was doing like Corn and Pumpkins, and now our new drummer is just like a full-time student because he's a younger guy. And then I, run my video game company, which is also quite a lot of work. It's why I was a little bit late to this stream today, because it never ends. And if I let myself like go until 6:30 at night, like I will find myself doing it. So
that's I know we have some more questions about the band, but that's a perfect segue into your video game company, Proponent Games. Yeah. How did this come about? I know you were a video game fan. Well, and we're going to definitely get into that, but how did this company start, and what are you guys doing for the smaller indie game developers?
So it's kind of crazy how it started, man. Like I was so used to the cycle of just like going on tour, making a little bit of money from that, trying to live on it as best I could until the next tour started, and then rinse and repeat. You know what I mean? Allegiant's gotten to the point where we now tour 4 or 5 times a year. And, as things were, unbeknownst to us, getting to a point where things were about to shut down, we were doing like more and more headliners and, getting, bigger and better support bands. And, we were on a really good trajectory to just kind of become like a headlining band. Which, obviously comes with the perks of making more money while you're out on the road, usually selling higher numbers in merch, being able to like kind of pick and choose what bands you take out on support, and, building the best packages kind of around your headlining slot. So it's where you want to be as a touring band, is a headlining band that like actually has draw. And so it was like, sweet, like this is now becoming a thing that not only myself, but like all the rest of the band can also live on. And then, the shit hit the fan with the coronavirus and everything got shut down. Bye-bye live music for a couple years. So when that happened, I was like, well, shit, like time to pivot. You know what I mean? Like, sink or swim time pretty much. And so, I had this investment portfolio that I was working on with a friend that I was kind of like, well, let's take what I have in this and make a video game. I've always wanted to make a game. I'm super into like story-based narrative type of games.
Yeah, me too.
Even beyond the realm of like JRPGs and even Western RPGs. Things that are almost like visual novel tearjerker type of stuff, like Gone Home. Yeah, Gone Home and To the Moon and like stuff like that. So that's kind of where I was at with it. I was like, well, let's make like a low budget, like visual novel storytelling kind of thing. Start low, aim high, see what happens. And as I continued to talk to people that I had, been connected to in the games industry through, various different people, I started to learn very quickly that it's like, because I have no game design skills. I don't know anything about coding. I just had like the creative idea and was ready to just kind of hand it over to a team of developers and be like, yeah, let's, I'll be the project lead and you guys can kind of, follow my lead accordingly. And as I was going down that rabbit hole, I kind of started realizing that like, man, it's kind of a big gamble. Every development team that I was talking to was like, yeah, in order to get full funding for a game like this, you're going to need like a vertical slice, which is basically just like a top-down example of how the game works, that a publisher can look at and be like, based off the merit of this slice, we'll sign your game and, pay for its development. Works just like a record contract, basically. And they were like, yeah, you're going to need a vertical slice, and that's going to run you like 40 grand. And I was like, okay, word. Like, and that's just to like get the slice done. You know what I mean? And that's not even to guarantee that like a publisher is going to be interested. And several people were telling me like, yeah, like the window is closing pretty rapidly. Like there's a certain time of year, that's usually like right around this time right now where, publishers are buying games and doing all this stuff and signing contracts so that they can have stuff for like, midsummer of the next year or whatever. And I was just kind of like, what if I just invest like a little bit more money than it would take to make a vertical slice and just start a publishing thing of my own? So that's when I reached out to my now business partner, Steve Tom Sawyer, who basically introduced me. So Steve, I should give a little bit of background, so it's not like he's just some, like magical video game rabbit that I pulled out of a hat that like managed to propel this career. I mean, he kind of is that, but there's a reason. There's a reason for it. He worked as one of the main marketing people for Devolver Digital for quite a long time.
I freaking love Devolver Digital. I love their conferences they do. They're one of my favorite publishers.
So did you see I think it was E3. It might have been PAX. Did you see the thing where like they had a guy go on stage and like shoot the other guy in the head?
Yep. Oh yeah.
That was Steve.
Oh, that's him.
That's my business. Okay.
That's
he's the shooter.
That's a good one. It's a good guy to get involved with.
Yeah, totally.
He's got your back then, at least.
Yeah, exactly. He'll kill people for this company. No, but he he had been actively involved in the releases of games like Enter the Gungeon and The Messenger and Gris and Shadow Warrior 2 and just all kinds of amazing titles. And so I knew him through Metal. Another guy who kind of works in the game industry. I think he's a community manager for Microsoft now. His name's Kyle Gatto. I've known him for a long time through Heavy Blog is Heavy. And then Kyle hit me up on Facebook a few days before a Halloween show of 2019 and was just like, hey, this dude Steve is going to roll out. He also works in video games. I told him to go say hi if you're at merch or whatever. And so we met that night and just kind of like chopped it up, talked video games, like really hit it off, but then kind of just lost touch as you do with people you meet on tour. Yep. And so I started talking to him and I was like, hey, like, I want to start this publishing thing, but I'm like new to the game industry, even though I'm a huge fan of video games. Where would you recommend I start? And he was like, well, coincidentally, I've been talking to a couple developers myself for this other company. And obviously I can't give you, stuff that this guy wants. But there's a couple things that he wasn't necessarily interested in at the time that I think could do really well. And that's pretty much how we signed our first couple games. There was like 3 or 4 games we were looking at, and we just spoke to the developers that we were most interested in working with. And one of them fell through, unfortunately, but 2 of them stuck. And we just released our first game 4 days ago, something like that. But yeah, when we started this company, we were just kind of like, one of the things that Steve had really, that had put a really bad taste in his mouth in working in the game industry for so long is like the huge amount of underrepresentation of a lot of different groups. May come as a surprise, but a lot of this industry is very niche, very cliquey. It's a lot of times who
Yep.
And the people who know the most are people who have been in it for a long time, and those people are generally like 50-plus-year-old white dudes who tend to know other old white dudes.
Yep.
So when we started this company, he was like, because Steve is black, and he was like, when we started, he was like, as of right now, we are literally the only black-owned publishing company in video games.
That's crazy.
And I'm just like, shut up. No, we're not. Like, that doesn't make any sense. It's 2020. Like, what are you talking about? And he's just like, yeah, bro, it really do be like that. So,
First of all, tell him I appreciate The Messenger. I'm glad you brought that game up. It's one of my favorite games. And I worked in video games for a while. I worked in QA though, so I know how a lot of that stuff worked. I did about 3 years working on Rock Band games, unfortunately. So there's nothing like going to work for 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day on plastic instruments,
Oh yeah.
Playing the same Guns N' Roses song for 6 hours.
It was actually AC/DC.
Even worse.
Even worse.
If you ever seen that AC/DC track pack they had out, it was like the live album.
Mm-hmm.
I played that shit for almost a year and a half, 12 hours a day sometimes.
God.
And I was the only one good at the drums, so that's what I wound up doing most of the time.
That's amazing. Yeah, man.
People ask me, why do you not like AC/DC anymore? Good answer.
There you go. Perfect excuse. Yeah, man, but that's just kind of, something that he had experienced. It's something that, had caused a lot of strife, with interpersonal relationships in the industry. And so when we went into it, we were basically just like, look, like we want this business to stand on like 3 pillars. Those pillars being passion, community, and opportunity. And it's like, you can read it all in our mission statement that we have, up publicly on proponentgames.com. But the condensed version is that it's like we want to find people who have a passion and have like a vision and a creative goal that they value like more than anything. You know what I mean? I feel like everybody has one. Everybody has like a dream. Everybody has ambitions, and whether or not they're able to do that, oftentimes, or pursue those goals, oftentimes falls on the opportunities that they're presented. A lot of people never get those opportunities, and so we want to be able to offer those opportunities to those really impassioned game designers and development teams. And by doing that, structure a community around them that appreciates their game, appreciates what they're doing and why, and then expanding that community outward to other developers and other community members, and building something in the games industry that we feel doesn't really exist at this point. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of community driven incentives. There's a lot of, people who are really into indie games and really into like more low budget retro kind of stuff that aren't all about the AAA titles. And that's nothing new, but the people that are putting those games out and the incentives that are being put forward to make those things real is in very short supply. So that was kind of our mission statement when we started, and we stand by it to this day. So,
well, you have us to support. Metal Geeks will support you on anything you do on that. So let us know, man. We'll be here for you. So, talk about the first game that just came out, and where can people get it? Is it Steam only now, or?
Yeah, it's only on Steam right now. We're planning on porting it to the Switch here shortly, maybe a couple months. The game is called Anton Ball Deluxe. It's kind of like a very true to the arcade homage to games like Breakout and like the old school Mario Brothers. I'm kind of amazed that like no one had come up with this concept sooner. Like it's basically a Breakout game, right? You have like your wall of bricks on one side and your hole on the other side that you can't let the ball get past or else you lose a life. But instead of just being like a vertical paddle, or even like a ship or something like that, you are like an actual character, and you can jump and punch and move stuff, and all that good stuff. So that's basically where it comes in to where that mashup happens is in the control of the character, and that being a unique element to this type of game that has never really been done before. Yeah, and that's like the classic Anton Ball mode. And then the other mode is Punch Ball, which is very similar to like the really OG Mario, where you have like Donkey Kong up at the top and then like the platforms and the enemies coming out of the tubes and all this kind of stuff. But instead of jumping up below them and knocking them over, you have a ball that you throw at them and hit them, and then you just kind of run into them to deliver the second hit that knocks them out. And it's definitely an easier concept to grasp than Anton Ball original, but it is tough to master. That's kind of the whole draw to this game, I feel, is that it has a very, very low barrier to entry, but it has a really high skill ceiling.
Easy to learn, hard to master.
Yes, exactly.
The best games always are.
That's that classic arcade and like classic 8-bit, 16-bit video game thing is the mechanics are simple enough that you can just walk up and start. Yeah. But then
and people forget about that with, how advanced in all the AAA games that are out there now. People forget just a fun arcade game like that.
Yeah, and it's funny because someone recently did a review on it where they kind of brought that up, as they were just like, this game is like is wildly frustrating while playing it at home because you get 5 lives and 1 continue, and then that's it. Then you start over, which isn't completely true. As you get to each new world, if you lose all your lives and you continue, you can start at the beginning of the last world that you unlocked. And I think that there's 5 worlds total. So you don't have to necessarily start all the way from the beginning. That would be cruel and unusual. But
that reviewer just wasn't very good at it. That's
this but he mentioned this thing that was really cool where he was like, this game is very well designed for arcades. And I think that he was like, at first I was like, man, this game designer sucks. Like, they made all these stupid mistakes. But then the more I played it, I was like, wait a minute, these were all intentional things put in the game by the designer as like a true homage to like arcade style games. Because if you think back to like the era of the arcades, all of those games were strategically designed to just steal your quarters.
Munchers, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, totally. And so it's like, you look at a game like Ghosts and Goblins, right? Where it's like,
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm playing the new one on the Switch right now, Resurrection.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is the hardest fucking game I think I've ever played in my life.
Yeah.
Even compared to the old ones. It's so difficult.
It's not easy. It's not easy. And I guarantee you, once you get to the end of this new one, it's going to start you right back at the beginning, just like the old one did.
Oh, I already know it will be.
I don't think that's a bad thing, though. Like, I think a lot of people out there want really challenging games, especially like looking back at Cuphead. Cuphead was extremely hard, but it was pretty easy to learn and a lot of fun.
You know what's super funny about Cuphead? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say real quick, Dave over here plays Doom in like the hardest mode possible.
Yeah. So I grew up on like action platformers, like Sonic and Mario, and that Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis era of video games is like when I was growing up with video games. And I never really knew it because I'm the opposite type of person. It's not that I don't want a challenge, but like I don't want a game to piss me off and make me super sweaty. Like that's not why I play video games. And like some people super into that, like they get that adrenaline rush and they like lock in and the high focus, and it's like meditative in its own way. I understand why. It's just not for me.
I'm only that way with specific things. I'm that way with Doom and like a couple other things. But for the most part, if I'm playing games, I'm either looking for like a story or like a really rich world to get lost in or something like that.
Sure. Exactly. I'm the exact same way. And so when like all these like FromSoft games started getting super popular, I was just like, man, fuck this. Like I'm super not into it, and it sucks because it's like it's right up my alley aesthetically. It's like exactly what I like to look at when I'm playing shit, just like grim and creepy and like morose and just dark. But it's so hard for me to give a shit about those games and enjoy those other elements of it because I'm constantly trying to not die. And like like in before get good, fuck off. So which makes me laugh because FromSoft is like on top of the world right now. They just did the Demon Souls remaster. Demon Souls kind of put them on the map, and then they have Dark Souls games, Bloodborne. Now they're working on Elden Ring, like bunch of crazy cool stuff people have become totally hooked into.
And there's so many copycats too.
Oh yeah. Now, dude, it's a whole genre now. Souls type games. It's a whole ass genre. Code Vein, and others I like to call it Weeb Souls.
Mortal Shell, I think, is one of them. The new one.
Yeah, Mortal Shell. And dude, it's crazy. There's even like 2D Metroidvania Souls types. Salt and Sanctuary is one of them.
I was gonna mention that game.
Yeah,
but so fucking difficult.
Yeah, super hard, super hard. And it for me personally, it's not why I play games. I play games to like unwind after a stressful day and like just kind of like chill out. You know what I mean? And that's not to say I don't like a challenge. Like Sekiro was, like my absolute favorite game of that year. Like when it won the Gamer Awards, I was just like, oh, sick. No surprises there because it's so good. And I feel like it's a perfect balance. Like it's difficult. And there's items in the game that you can get to make it more difficult. But even as it stands, it's like enough of a challenge with enough of a story, with enough of a really beautiful world to explore. And it's just like this perfect mash of all three things. So it's not to say that I don't like a game that has a challenge. But I just grew up in a different time, which is why I started this whole yarn about difficult games. I grew up in a time where it's like that difficulty was inherent to video games, but it was just in a different medium. And I think that that's kind of why I'm not super into like the third person over the shoulder, really difficult type of games, like the Souls type games, because that's not really what I grew up with. But when Cuphead came out, I like avoided it like the plague because people were just like, oh, it's super hard, it's super difficult. And I'm just like, if the only thing about your game that makes it worth playing is that it's hard, I don't want to play it. Like, that's not enough for me. And so I just avoided it because that was basically like what I got from it. And last year, I finally picked it up because it was like $5 on a Steam sale or something. And I was like, all right, let's play it. And like,
it's charming as hell, isn't it?
Well, that's when I learned that, like, oh yeah, I'm really good at platformers. Like, that's like those are the games that I like. That's what my reflexes are like shaped around. And I feel like
for it.
Yeah, I feel like everyone kind of has their thing, right? Like people who are just like slightly younger than me are really good at first-person shooters because they came up on things like Counter-Strike and Halo and you know things that I played growing up. But I was already like in high school. I wasn't in the mode of like sitting there playing video games all day every day like I was when I was a little bit younger, like middle school.
Cuphead is a modern-day Contra.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I played that game and I kind of like breezed through it. I was just like, you know.
It really wasn't that bad for me. It's just pattern recognition up until you get to King Dice, and then it gets hard.
Yeah, dude, he was a pain in the dick. But even still, it was like, you know, his whole thing where it's like he rolls the dice, and each level is like it's like I died enough times on that part that it got to the point where I was learning the patterns of each number of the dice, and I was just like, okay, word, like. I will say though that I did land on like the go back to the beginning one, like as I was towards the end a couple times.
I did that,
and
too.
I was just like, "Why would you do this? Why as a game designer would you make this conscious choice? You sadist!" Like I did.
Did you guys ever play a game called Eternal Darkness on the GameCube?
Okay, yes, I love it.
Sanity's Requiem.
Yes, and that game would fuck with you too. Like you would got to a part and it's like, oh, your save game has been deleted. You're like, what the? What's going on?
That game introduced me to fourth wall breaks, and it is actually what got me into Metal Gear Solid.
Metal Gear Solid was my fourth wall break.
Yeah, is that there were so many weird fourth wall breaks in Eternal Darkness. Like you know, it was still back in the era of CRT TVs, and so you know they do stuff that it would make you think that like something was wrong with your TV or like your connections, like your little you know red, white, and yellow. And so you'd be like checking it, like what the fuck is going on with this game? And then it would just like pop back to normal, and you're just like, oh yeah, I see what you did. It was just like so much of that in that game, and it was super cool. And I remember playing it, or not playing it, but talking to a friend. I was working at a GameStop at the time that I played it, and I was like, yeah, dude, those fourth wall breaks, man, they're so cool. And he was like, yeah, like Metal Gear. And I was like, what are you talking about? I thought that was like a Splinter Cell siphon filter type of game. And he's like, well, it is sorta. It's like if those games had really good stories and like really, really innovative game design. And I was just like, what are you talking about? And he was just like, here. Next day, he brought me a copy of 1 for PS1. And was just like, play this and you know, make sure you don't lose the case. And I was just like. What a weird thing to say. Like I'm not going to lose the case. Like okay, whatever. And then I got to the first thing, which you know I would say spoilers only, but the game's been out for 25 years, so like it's not my fault. I haven't played it yet. So the first fourth wall break, where they're like, yeah, Meryl's codec, it's on the back of the disc, Snake, and you're just like, what do you? And it sucks because it's like right before that in the game you get like a data disc like in-game item, and so I'm like looking at this disc being like, where's your fucking codec? Like I can't, like, are you kidding me? Like I can't find it anywhere. And then you sit there and you stew on it and you're like mad that you can't find the fucking disc that you're looking for after running around the game all kinds, and then you're just like wait, on the back, no, they know. And then you look at the fucking back of the actual case and there's Meryl's codec number because you're in a conversation with her on the case, and I was just like, what?
See, I feel like that's a That was the first time I encountered that in a console game, but like
Yeah.
that had been a technique in PC gaming for decades already by that point.
I feel like Full Throttle had something like that, but I can't remember what it was.
Yeah,
And I didn't play Full
I've played
Throttle, but I feel like the Space Quest games had that
Mhm.
going on, and some of those other like adventure kind of games like you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think some of the graphic Zork games did too.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to love the old Sierra, King's Quest and Space Quest and all those Quest games.
Yeah. Oh, here's a point of contention. So so after that I was like sold on Metal Gear. I played all the games. I have a Foxhound tattoo on my arm. Like I'm super into Metal Gear. That being said, if you're a Metal Gear fan, you're probably going to get mad about me saying this, but 4 is the best one. I'm sorry. It just is. Like 4 is the best Metal Gear game. Like, 3 is really good. Okay, whatever. Like I get it. It's, it's the most in-depth, I'd say, as far as like game design and like the weird little quirky things that you can do. But that's not what makes a game. Those are just icing on the cake. If you tried to eat a cake that was 10% cake and 90% icing, you would throw up. It's not good. So I'm just gonna stick to my guns and say that 4 is the best one, and I hope my business partner is watching right now and just yelling up the lungs because this argument.
Your ex-business partner.
Yeah, right, dude. It's so funny because it's like all the things he hates about it are the things that like I love. Like towards the end during the last battle that you're having with Liquid Snake, they do this kind of like through the generations type of thing where it's like you'll do part of the battle and then it'll like hit a cutscene, and then when you go back into the battle it'll be like you're playing 1 or 2 or 3, and it'll like have the HUD and like all this kind of stuff. It's like throwback titles, and he's just like, bro, that shit is so corny and dumb. And I'm like, well, it's so sick. That was like my favorite part of that boss fight. Like,
did you ever play like the action spin-off? Like, was it with Revengeance was one of them?
Oh yeah. It's not.
The only thing I remember about that game is John Bush from Armored Saint did like vocals in the game.
That tracks. I feel like there's a lot of metal vocalists that are getting more and more work as like voices in video games. The Doom Choir was something, you know.
We know somebody in that Doom Choir. James
I was
from Hellstar.
I was almost in the Doom Choir, but I got, I started an email thread after posting my audition with Mick Gordon, and he was like, yeah, like I'm interested, like what's your availability, can you do these days, here's the pay, here's all this stuff. I was like, cool, man, we're good to go. And he's like, oh, one more thing, do you have a manager? And I was like, well, I don't have a manager, but my band has a manager. And he was just kind of like, oh, I don't know, like we've worked with people who have managers before and they always try to like butt in and demand shit, and like the budget on this is super tight and blah blah blah, and the Bethesda and all this stuff. And I was just like, yeah, man, that's not gonna happen. I don't know how familiar you are with death metal, but our managers don't demand things because there's no wiggle room to do so. I'm not gonna, my manager's not gonna call you last minute and be like, where is the limousine filled with prostitutes that was supposed to pick him up from the airport? Like, it's not how this genre works. And he was just like, yeah, no, I know, haha, but like still,
but seriously.
And yeah, he was like, it's just red tape, and I'll talk to the higher ups and see what they say, and they just never got back to me. So,
oh man,
that's
so close yet so far. But a couple of my really good friends ended up being in there, and I think that they did a really good job, despite the fact that it kind of got mixed out in post. You can't really hear much of it in the track that it's supposed to be in. But
the only thing, I watched the making of it, the behind the scenes. It's the only way to really tell who was in it.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Speaking of, we're still talking about video games. So, what are you playing now? Do you have the newer systems, and what games are you playing?
I do have both next gen or current gen consoles.
So do I, yeah.
The PS5 and I have an Xbox One, not Xbox One, Series S. I didn't get the Series X. I got the PS5 with a disc drive just because I have such a huge backlog of PS4 games.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't get the Series S because I never really played my Xbox One. I think I've fired that thing on like all of half a dozen times.
Oh wow!
It's just because like I have a good PC, and most of the games that I would want to play on Xbox, I can just play on PC in better quality and all that kind of stuff. But with PlayStation, it was like, you know, I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan. Most of my tattoos are Final Fantasy oriented. And like, you know, they're notorious for not only waiting upwards of a year to port their shit to PC, but then when they do, it's so bad. It's like really terrible. It's like the
So
ports.
did you wait to play 7 Remake on the 5, or did you play it on the 4?
No, I played it on the 4, like right when it came out. And the thing is, though, is that they incentivize you so much to play it on the 5 when it comes out in June that I'm for sure gonna be doing it. I never
for free in like one of the PlayStation monthly games.
Right. It's right now it's the PS Plus free game,
Okay.
but if you bought it prior to that, not only do you get the PS5 upgrade for free if it's in your library, not from the PS Plus thing, which I thought was kind of shady. I felt like they should have announced that a little bit more clearly. If you get it for PS4 through the PS Plus free monthly game thing, you don't get the free upgrade.
That sucks, man.
Which is kind of whack. But if you bought it when it came out, you do get the free upgrade, and not only that, but your save file carries over, which is awesome because I never beat it on hard mode. Like I started, but it was like I beat it and played through it, and then right after that, my wife beat it and played through it, and so by the time I was like, okay, I'm gonna, you know, dive into hard mode and do all this kind of shit. It's like I had just watched the game be played and beaten twice, so I was like, I need a little break from Final Fantasy VII Remake. But now that it's getting that PS5 bump, I'm like, I'll just go in and beat it on hard mode and do all the secret bosses and all that stuff with awesome occlusive lighting. Fucking
And Yuffie.
Yeah, and Yuffie. Oh god. I've just kind of resigned myself to the idea that like it really is a remake in every sense of the word. Like it's a different game. Like it's a very loose following of the story that took place in the original. And I like that, you know what I mean? The other thing is that it's like Square has a tendency to do this thing where they will release games as part of a franchise, but like really not make it clear to you that like if you don't play this game that we released as part of this franchise, it's not just like a non-canonical offshoot. Like you just won't understand what's going on in the next game. And I learned that lesson kind of the hard way with Kingdom Hearts 3, because I had played 1 and Chain of Memories and 2, and then kind of fell off because I was like, you know, graduating high school and, you know, 12 years between 2 and 3. But the thing is that in those 12 years, like every other year, they would release a game that I was just kind of like, oh yeah, it's just like an offshoot under the Kingdom Hearts title. Yeah. And then I started up 3 and was like, what the fuck is going on here? Like they're like, oh, what? Like, why is this person?
I felt the same way. I'm like,
yeah, it was wild, man.
There's like a mobile game you had to play and all this kind of shit.
I was just like, what the fuck, Square Enix? So they've kind of done that same thing with the Final Fantasy VII remake. Is that it's like if you didn't play Dirge of Cerberus, like there's a big thing in that last trailer that like you would be like, oh, they're adding another new character, and it's like actually they're not adding another new character. That's Vice from Dirge of Cerberus. It's been, I guess, canonical since like 2006. And same thing with like Crisis Core. Like if you didn't play Crisis Core, there's so much in remake that you're just going to be like, what is happening here? But I feel like a lot of people kind of knew that like Crisis Core is part of like the Final Fantasy VII canon. And so they played it.
Yeah, I didn't play. I know exactly what you're talking about because I didn't play Crisis Core, but my wife did.
Yeah.
And so while we were going through it, she was like, "Well, this is why."
Yeah.
Over and over again. It made sense, but yeah, you're definitely right about how they expect you to play everything they release.
They just need to do like previously on Final Fantasy to get you caught up before you start.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is that it's crazy because it's like they kind of try to do that, but they do it in like the most Japanese way ever, which is just musical montage over a cutscene. Like if you watch the intro for Kingdom Hearts 2, it shows you everything that happened in Chain of Memories.
Yep.
but it's it's while Sanctuary by Utada Hikaru is playing in the background, and it's just like, and you and I, and then it's just fucking all this like crazy shit going on. You're like, why is he running upstairs? What is this White Castle? Who's this little blonde girl? What is going on here?
They just released that Rhythm game on the Switch, and apparently that's canonical too. It's like,
is it really?
Yeah, you have to play a Rhythm game to know what's going on in the series.
That's so funny. Well, I haven't beaten 3, but I got that Rhythm game, and I think you're kind of right, because I stopped playing that Rhythm game because I started seeing spoilers that were in 3.
Oh yeah,
and I was like, oh fuck, because like you'd play through the regular worlds and it would do all the thing, and I was actually kind of like, oh, maybe this will be kind of a cool way for me to like catch up on the story. But then I started. They have like character specific tracks, and I started playing one of the Kyrie tracks, expecting it to be like, oh well, this is just episode 1 of like, it's like Kyrie track part 1 or whatever. And so I played that, but then it like went through her entire story arc all the way to the end of 3, and I was just like, fuck, now I know how 3 ends. Like, god damn it. Like, so I stopped playing it.
Let me ask you, I'm a big Kingdom Hearts nerd. When 3 came out, I was so excited for it. But ultimately, I felt super let down with just everything about it. It felt like it should have come out when they started making it 12 years ago. That's when it should have come out. It just felt very antiquated.
Right. So I had trouble getting into 3 for a few different reasons. And I never actually beat it. The end is very difficult, I'll tell you that much. Yeah, I got like halfway. I got like halfway through like the Tangled world, which I think is like the third fourth world, something like that. And there were a few different reasons why I couldn't get into it. The first reason is that, like I said, as soon as I started up, I was immediately lost. I was just like, who are these kids like playing chess? What is their whole story? Like, what is this Keyblade War stuff that I'm supposed to know about? Like, why is Kyrie on an island with Axel? Like, what is happening here? I was just I just want my sea salt ice cream. Come on. Yeah, I was just completely lost. I had no idea what was going on. And so I was like immediately discouraged, because I was just like, man, now I have to like go back and play a fucking backlog of games. And like, fortunately there's those like kind of like, like Kingdom Hearts 2.8 remix master collection or whatever, that has like all the games in it. And like some of them have been condensed, like 358 Days Over 2. I got to like kind of experience that game firsthand, because instead of having to actually play through it, they kind of condense it. Right? Yeah, they condense it into like the cutscenes with these little text pieces in between where you can kind of like, And so I like, got to get a good cry out of that game, which, if you're not crying at the end of a Kingdom Hearts game, I don't believe you're actually a human being. And so there were a couple that I was able to kind of like backtrack and get myself up to speed too. But like halfway through Birth by Sleep, I was like, man, I forgot that like these are whole ass games like that I have to dedicate 30-40 hours to like actually grow attached to these characters and like learn all the ins and outs, and like Square Enix being who they are and who they always have been, it's like if you really want to learn everything about everything, you have to like read all the books and explore all the areas and get all these secrets and all this kind of stuff. It's like Final Fantasy VII, Lucretia's Cave, like it's like that kind of shit that you like really have to dig and be invested into the game for. And I'm just like, man, I do not have time in my entire life to catch up with all these Kingdom Hearts titles. So that was immediately discouraging. The second thing that I found kind of discouraging was that I was like, man, this game is really shiny, but it just doesn't have the same charm that the first ones had, like right off the bat. You go to Hercules World, and like the dialogue between all the characters feels super corny and kind of forced, and like it just doesn't have that same like like the charm of like, oh, Grumpy Donald, and like, oh, Goofy's an idiot, but like Sora, Heart of Gold. Like it just felt like they were supposed to be. They just felt more like tropey anime characters instead of like these well cultivated characters that have been developed upon for several games. So that was the other thing. And then the final nail in the coffin was when I started getting into the more modern Disney Pixar worlds. Yeah. Because man, like the last time I played a Kingdom Hearts game was 2006, right? I think that's when 2 came out.
Yep.
And so I was like, yeah, like in 2006, that's the year I graduated high school. Like I was, I was a kid. And then 12 years later, I'm literally 30 years old. Like I have not been keeping up on fucking Tangled and Frozen. Like if I had kids, maybe it would be a different story. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, you're gonna love the fucking Frozen level. It's like nothing but a song.
Oh my god! And so, oh my god! And so yeah. So it's like as soon as I started getting into these newer titles that like I hadn't seen the movies for, because of course I haven't. That was kind of it for me. I was just like, man, like I think I might just not ever get around to beating Kingdom Hearts 3, and I had to like kind of come to peace with that because I was okay, like, man. It's supposed to be the end of the saga, but it was like all the games in between and like the kind of ham-handed delivery of the characters and the modern Disney movies being such a major part. I was just like, man, I no longer have interest. So
are you playing anything current now on your PS5?
Not really. I beat both of the Spider-Man games, platinumed those bad boys. I don't really want to start Demon Souls, and then it's like, what else do you really have? You know what I mean? I guess I could play like Astro's, or like Bug Snacks, or Sackboy Adventures, or like more of the like kid oriented.
Actually, a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I loved the first couple Little Big Planet games. I'm all about that like platforming puzzle type of stuff. So maybe I'll fire that one up. But before I got the PS5, I was playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Mm-hmm. Should probably dive back into that one. But what I've been playing for the past 2 weeks has been WoW, because after my conversation with Corpse Grinder, I was just like, man, I do miss World of Warcraft. Maybe I should play it. Like, I just haven't had time, is how I've just kind of written it off. Is like, man, I do not have time for an MMO right now. There's still so much to catch up on. Like, I haven't played that game since, oh man, the Death Knight one. What was that expansion called?
The Frozen North or whatever. Frozen Throne.
No, I think Frozen Throne was a Warcraft 3 expansion.
Okay.
I know
the
the
one
one
you're talking about.
It was World of Warcraft, and then it was Burning Crusade, and then it was like the Death Knight one that I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah,
but
that's where I fell off too.
There's been like 4 or 5 expansions since then, so I'm just like, man, I have so much to catch up on and all this stuff. But I finally just decided to pull the trigger and was like, you know what? I'll just spend my evenings playing some WoW. And as new games continue to come out for these current gen consoles, I'll divert my attention over to those.
Our friend Jeff says it was Wrath of the Lich King.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Good job, Jeff.
Yeah, and now it's like a whole new game for me now. It's like, I think it started me off in the one before this most current one, Shadowlands. Battle for Azeroth, I think, is where it like started me. So I'm just like, man, if I want to like catch up, I have to go back and do like Mists of Pandaria and actually finish Wrath of the Lich King and like do all kinds of stuff. I have like 10 years of expansions to catch up on. So no shortage of shit to do in the old World of Warcraft.
That's always been true.
Yeah.
I've been recently playing. I went back and never finished, but The Last of Us 2 on my PS5, and then recently playing all the new Hitman games. So I started with Hitman 3 and then sort of working back.
Yeah.
I somehow they really dug into me. I'm like, oh, this is so cool where it's a game where you can just sort of figure out how you want to play the level. And it was after playing a game that was so deep, like The Last of Us 2, I was looking for something that was more lighter like that. Just go around and killing people if I wanted to.
I really wanted to get into the Hitman series when 3 got announced. And then they were like, oh, well, if you just wait until 3 comes out, there's going to be like in-game, like remastered versions of 1 and 2 that you can buy and play. And I was like, oh, sick, I'll just do that. But then they were like, oh, yeah, no, they're like full price games, though. Like if you want to it's like, give us like $200 and we'll give you Hitman 3, Hitman 1, and Hitman 2, and then like all the little like bonus missions and all that.
Yeah,
kind of
I don't
shit.
have
And I
on
was
the
like,
bonus
man,
because I have them on disc. Like,
yeah,
you have to buy the digital deluxe version. It's
yeah,
the whole thing. My biggest complaint about it is you have to be on their server to play. I
right.
played a whole fucking level, not realizing I wasn't logged into their server. None of my save stuff went through.
Oof,
I
That
was like, oh,
sucks.
come on.
brutal.
That's like one of
That's
the worst
brutal.
designs ever, man.
Yeah.
Let's get back to your band a little bit.
Oh yeah, totally.
I want to talk about. I right now I have Roundabout stuck in my head. You guys' version of that song is phenomenal, and the Rush covers you did, Animate. It's one of my favorite songs of all time.
Oh yeah.
Where did you? Why did you do those couple Rush songs and the Yes song, and then what other songs do you guys want to like put your own spin on? We're gonna get like a whole covers album yet?
No, so you might be disappointed at that answer, but I'll start at the beginning. So with Rush, with the Rush songs, it was kind of like meant to be part of like a covers thing. But then we ended up putting subdivisions at the end of Proponent, and it was supposed to like be kind of like a bonus track, but then it just ended up on the track listing, and that's always bothered me. I kind of fucking hate it because it's like Proponent is this like it's a concept album, you know what I mean? Like it has Proponent part 1, 2, and 3, and like this connective tissue in between, and 3 ends on such a strong note of just like they asked us, is there a God? We asked them if there's a God. They answered, there is now. And then like it just like boom, it just ends, and I'm just like, what a good way to end that album. And then it's just fucking boom, 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 boom. I was, God damn it. So that's always bothered me. I wish that it was like a like a bonus track or got released separately as a single, kind of like how we did Animate.
At least it's at the end of the album.
Yeah, at least it's at the very end. At least and try to shove it somewhere in the middle.
Remember back in the day when they would put like a secret bonus track on it?
Yeah,
you had to wait a few minutes. There's nothing.
That's what I wanted us to do, but the problem was that it's like streaming. You know what I mean? Like no one, buying CDs isn't your only medium to listen to music anymore. And now that you can stream everything, it's like you go onto Spotify and you're like, why is Proponent for Sentience Part 3 18 minutes long? Like what? Like, and why is half of it silence? This is so weird. Like, so it's like a whole different thing that needs to be done in the mastering process, and that's why we ended up just tacking it at the end of the album. And yeah, anyway, and the way we kind of decided on those records was decided on those songs was that we wanted to cover something. The reason that I am in Allegion is because Greg is a huge fan of an album that I did with my old band Son of Aurelius called Under a Western Sun, in which I sing a lot. A lot of clean vocals on that album. And so Greg wanted to introduce the idea of like clean singing in Allegion. He's like, it's something that I've always wanted, but our old vocalist just like, that wasn't his forte. Like it's, but now that we have you, like, I want to do stuff that's like that. And so I was like, well, in the interest of not like alienating your fans by getting a new singer, and then all of a sudden clean vocals start happening. And also in the interest of not making Allegion fans all hate me, let's do this thing on like a slow drip release. And so it's like, in Proponent 3, we got Bjorn from Soilwork to do guest vocals, and it like kind of introduced the idea of clean vocals. And then we put my clean vocals in these Rush covers. And so it was like, okay, like these guys have a little bit more in their tool belt now that they, let's see how they work this into future albums. So it was kind of like a strategic maneuver to like introduce clean vocals into the band without pissing everyone off. And the way we kind of decided on what songs to do is that we were just like, we're both super big prog nerds, me and Greg. But he's more of like, he's super into like 80s, 90s prog stuff, and I'm way more into like 60s, 70s prog stuff. So there was a lot of like, let's do this song, and like he wanted to do Machine Messiah by Yes. And I was like, no, I'm not covering a 90s Yes song. And then it would be like, oh, well, let's do Genesis. And I'm just like, yes, I love Peter Gabriel. And he's like, no, I mean like Phil Collins era Genesis. It's like, fuck this. So there was a lot of like back and forth between me and him on what to decide. We ended up landing on Rush, and then just doing 2 Rush songs. one from like older era Rush and then one from, you know, newer era, which is why we did Animate. And then with Roundabout, you know, while we were talking about doing Rush and all that kind of stuff, Yes was a band that came up often. I originally wanted to do Heart of the Sunrise. He originally wanted to do Machine Messiah. And we were kind of just like, look, if we're going to do a Yes song, let's just do a popular one, like something that everybody knows. We're not going to do... God, it's like I've purposely just like blocked it out of my brain. What's that super like radio single Yes song that they did? Oh God, this is gonna drive me crazy. Hold on,
I have like zero Yes knowledge, so
yeah.
Really?
I know very little about Yes, actually.
Owner of a Lonely Heart.
Oh yeah, okay.
Oh, well, I know that obviously.
Yeah, and we were like,
Obviously,
we're not gonna do Owner of a Lonely Heart. That's not gonna happen. It's like a disco song, and so and so we were like, oh, well, what about Roundabout? And so we kind of settled on that one. And the reason that we did that was because Metal Blade, based off of how well Subdivisions did, actually like sat down and like had a conversation as a label, being like, what's the next progressive rock song that Allegiant should cover, kind of type of thing. But the thing is that it's like, yeah, it's cool to like hear these modern death metal takes on these like old progressive rock songs, and they're a lot of fun to do, but we're not trying to become, you know, the Alien Ant Farm of death metal where everyone only knows us for this cover song that we did. So I think that for now it's going to be a while, if ever, before we release another cover tune. Really just kind of focusing on producing new original music, and I think that that's kind of the trajectory that we're going to take for the next few albums. So
now with this pandemic,
how's the next album coming?
Yep.
It's good, man. It's is an extremely dark album. We're kind of, you know, obviously the pandemic has affected people in a lot of different ways. And instead of being corny and being like, this is the pandemic album, this song is called fucking Coronavirus Die. Like, I just like it. Instead of being that band, we're really just kind of taking just the stress and the accumulated negativity that has come along with everything of the past year and a half, and like really funneling that into our creative process. And so what you get when you do that is an album that's like, yeah, it's still a mellow death record, technical melodic death metal, whatever Allegiant falls under in the subgenre lottery. But we are really moving in a direction where it's like, it would almost be kind of tone deaf at this point to be like, hey guys, you want to hear some metal about science? Like, it's like,
yeah.
So we're kind of moving things into a more personal direction, writing an album that we can all relate to as musicians and as people. And it's almost done. We plan on going into the studio here in just a couple months and probably doing like a late this year, early next year release, I would say. Just projecting. Don't quote me on that, but
that's awesome, though.
I think that's probably what we're going to be looking at as far as a release window. So yeah, man, it's pretty much all done. There's a few things that still need to be written, some fine tuning that needs to be done, but it's a crushing album, man. Like, I listen to it and I'm just like, damn, this album fucking like makes my chest hurt. Like, it's it's got a lot of weight to it for sure.
Is there going to be an overarching concept to it, or is it going to be just individual songs?
Yeah, it's got more of a theme than a concept, I'd say. And that theme is just kind of like, dealing with just constantly being barraged by like, negativity from the outside, affecting like the way your mental health is, and having those things kind of expand out into a way that like affects your world and your worldview. Not only providing individual perspective of like the person that's going through all these things and these changes and these negative emotions, but also from a perspective of someone who's kind of like observing this like proverbial fall from grace type of thing. So it's definitely a much more emotionally involved album than anything that I'd say we've released up until this point. I'd say Apoptosis kind of like dipped its toes into that direction. Songs like The Secular Age and Metaphobia, kind of veered from like the scientific thing, but like still stayed on track with the theme of Apoptosis, which was kind of like out with the old, in with the new.
Mhm.
But in topics that was like, we had our sciencey songs like Exothermic Chemical Combustion, that's all about forest fires, enriching the soil, even though the forest burns down, out with the old, in with the new type of thing. Or Extremophiles, which is all about, evolving and adapting to your circumstances, and, tardigrades and all that kind of shit. But then we had songs like, The Secular Age, which is all about like abandoning outdated religious ideologies to kind of like move forward together as a society. And then Metaphobia, which is kind of just like abandoning the fear of being outside of societal expectations and like just making the plunge to do what drives you. And then that all kind of came to a head in the title track of Apoptosis, which is just like do better. Like just look at yourself, look at the world around you, figure out how you can contribute, and just do something to make the world a better place. By identifying these old shitty things and replacing them with new, better ones. So Apoptosis kind of touched on that a little bit in the lyrical content, but with this album, it's like we're really kind of diving headfirst into this like, introspective journey of self-discovery during these extremely unforeseeably difficult times for so many people. So I'm really excited to put this one out there, because I think that it'll resonate with people a lot more than like, hell yeah, bro, the golden ratio, like fucking. Which, don't get me wrong, like I think that Allegion's whole like sciencey theming and all this kind of stuff, like it's been a lot of fun, and it is always super interesting to write about. I always learn a lot exploring topics for. Like stellar tidal disruption is all about black holes eating stars and then spitting galaxies out on the other side. Like it's super cool, and like there's so many cool theories that I've stumbled upon and just got lost in while writing lyrics for this band. But I think that, like I said, at this point in time, it would be kind of tone deaf to be like, well, they just sent a rover over to Mars, that's cool, right? Everybody suffering, fucking like
Right. So a lot of this album was probably was written and recorded during this past year. How did that work with everybody not living nearby each other?
We've always been remote as long as I've been in the band. When I first joined, 3 of the 5 members lived in Denver. But then when Corey, our old bass player, quit, we replaced him with a guy from Northern California. We recently, unfortunately, had to fire our drummer, Brandon Park, and then replaced him with a guy in Boston, even though he was in Illinois beforehand, so it didn't make that much of a difference when it comes to that kind of thing. Greg recently got married to a Canadian and is now often, in between Denver and Toronto. And then Michael is the only one who's like still in the Denver area. So the band has been very fractured location wise for pretty much as long as I've been in the band. Myself living in San Diego, forgot to mention that. I live in Southern California. So it's easier than you might think. Not being able to like get in a room and rehearse and all that kind of stuff. There is something to be said for that though. Like everybody getting together and like putting their creative thoughts on a song and doing all that kind of stuff. And so what we have started to do for this album especially is do these little like writing retreats where we're all together. We fly out to Denver and like hang out for like a week and then just go over the songs and change stuff on the fly, give each other creative input, be in a space where it's like we can listen to a song and then be like, oh, but wouldn't it be cool if this was here? Let's try to do this. And then just kind of like pop stuff in, play around with ideas, see what works, see what doesn't work. And that's kind of cool, being able to do that on an already mostly completed song rather than trying to do that from the start and like, having someone write a riff and then someone else comes in and does their thing. Like it's been so long since I've been in a band that does things that way that like I can't even remember how we would do it. Like I'm like, man, how do people write songs as a group? That doesn't even make sense to me anymore. And so and so usually what happens is it's like Greg will write a handful of songs, Mikey will write a handful of songs. Our bass player Boo Boo, well, his name is Brandon Michael, but we call him Boo Boo Money. Boo Boo will write a couple songs. Well, it's because when he joined the band, our lineup at the time, sans Corey, was Riley McShane, Greg Burgess, Michael Stancil, and Brandon Park. And then this guy comes in, and his name is Brandon Michael. And we were like, we already have a Brandon, and we already have a Michael. What do we call you? I'm not going to call you BM. That's fucking mean. Like, and so we were just like, how about Boo Boo Money? And so now
it was maybe because he tried to steal your picnic basket, but
no, I mean, I wouldn't put it past him. So yeah, Boo Boo will write a couple songs, and everybody kind of brings something to the table, and then we just like send it out. Everybody has a decent enough at home. We've all got our little Focusrite Scarlets and our our tone packs and all this kind of stuff, enough to create like a semblance of what the song might sound like when it's done. And so we'll just send that out, usually with programmed drums on it, and everybody will kind of write to that. And then once we have most of our parts put down, we get together for like a little pre-recording kind of writing retreat thing. And then once we hit the studio, we kind of tie the knot on like the last 5% of things that need to get done, I'd say, as far as like changes or dynamic things. And that's where having a producer like Dave Botero comes in really handy, because he's super involved in that process. It's like if he hears something that he thinks is weird, he is not going to be shy about it and just be like, oh yeah, whatever, well, they're paying me to record stuff, so I guess I'm just going to record stuff. He'll fully be like, no, do this thing here, see how this sounds, maybe speed up that vocal delivery a little bit, like let's do stuff like this. So we kind of do that last little bit of like creative changes in the studio, and voila, after a year or two, that's you have a new Allegiant record.
Where do your lyrics come in? Do you wait for semblance of like something to write towards, or do you come up with lyrics first and then bring him in and try to fit him?
No, I always write my lyrics to the song. And I don't, it's not like I like writing, and I'll do writing and journaling here and there. But I don't usually use that stuff. What I have found when I've tried to do stuff like that is that it's oftentimes very square peg round holy. You know what I mean? Like it's certain parts will work, but certain parts won't. And I just find myself rewriting most of what I had written already, that I would just prefer to just go from scratch. You know what I mean? Start from the beginning. So yeah, I usually wait until there's music before I start writing lyrics, and I won't wait for the song to be completely done. Like usually I'll write to like the programmed drums that the guitar player will write to like accompany their song, which is not how the drums are going to sound in the end once we get an actual drummer writing those parts. And like usually there's no bass on those versions, which also, if there's little bass flourishes that fall into the same frequency range as like my vocals at a certain part, like there needs to be a little bit of reworking. And then solos usually aren't written at that point either. So I need to generally know like, hey, which parts of these songs, like give me timestamps, from 36 seconds to a minute 10, this is going to be a guitar solo. But once I have all that, I can kind of just dive in, and, any changes that do need to be made towards the end, once all those other instruments are in place, it's usually pretty minor. Yeah.
So hopefully, you said maybe the end of this year, early next year. Hopefully, by that time, things look better. So. Bands can start touring again, because I am missing some fucking live shows, like almost everybody is. Have tours sort of like bubbling up in the background, or? Yeah,
I mean we have one tour on the books right now that got announced a few months ago. It's an overseas tour though. It's a Euro tour with Archspire, Rivers of Nile, us, and Black Crown Initiate. I think there's one more band.
I'd love to see that show.
That's a great show.
I'm super stoked too, because it's like we know all those guys and those other bands, but at least in my time with Allegiant, we haven't had a chance to tour with them. I know Allegiant and Rivers did a tour in like 2014, but they've grown so much as a band that it's like, it's going to be pretty exciting. We did do 5 days with them in Australia, I want to say in 2019. It was Nabla Biscaris, Navel of Scars, Beyond Creation, Us, and then Rivers of Nile.
Wow.
Yeah, really good shows. But
kill to see that lineup.
it was only 5 of them, and it's Australia, and the way that Australian touring works is that it's like you fly in, you go to your hotel, you spend the night near where the first show is. Go to the venue, do your normal stuff, load in, sound check, doors, play the show, finish the show, pack down. But then instead of going to the van or the bus or whatever, you basically go like straight back to your room and try to sleep for like 2 or 3 hours. And then you have to wake up and get on a plane at the airport, which means like checking all of your gear. It's a fucking nightmare. You have to get to the airport like 6 hours before your flight starts because there's so much shit that you have to do beforehand. And then you fly to the next area and then you land and you go straight to the venue and, that kind of stuff. And it's like, it is so exhausting because you're sleeping, like I said, like 2 or 3 hours a night, catching half an hour here, half an hour there where you can. But it's basically like go 24 hours a day almost for like 5 days. So I'm like, man, I'm really enjoying these shows. They're such a good time. Fucking playing Australia was like a pretty magical experience. But goddamn, am I happy it's only 5 shows, because if it was any more than this, my head would explode. Like it would just be too much. So not only did we only play 5 shows with Rivers, but it was under those like extremely stressful, like go kind of circumstances. So it'll be nice to do a tour with them where we're like all on a bus together and, actually getting to hang out with them. And the same thing with Archspire. The only time that we've played together was at Hellfest in 2019. And they played right after us on the same stage. So it was, again, like, yeah, we'd see each other hang out for like a couple minutes, but there wasn't really much time to like actually get to hang out with those guys. So I'm excited to do a tour with those 2 bands where we actually get to like hang out and, get to know each other a little bit better. It's always one of the best parts of tours, making new friends with other band dudes. So that's exciting. And then we have something in the work that I can't unfortunately really talk about for early next year in the States. And we'll see how that pans out. But there are things being planned in the touring world. And I think a lot of bands are going to be kind of in that same boat of like really trying to hit the ground running within the first quarter of 2022 in the States and North America anyway.
It'd be great for us.
Yeah.
I know the age-old question is what bands influenced you, but I want to know what you're listening to now. What bands can you recommend that you want people to know about?
So someone just introduced, shameless Metal Blade plug. They just signed a band or are just now releasing stuff from a band called Iotune. So sick.
I think this is literally one of my top albums of the year so far.
Dude, it is really good. I was just like, wow.
The band Tyr did a live Q&A the other day, and one of the guys was talking about them, and he pronounced them Jotun. I was like, oh, I've been pronouncing it incorrectly, but whatever. I'm American, so
I was just gonna add it to the list of stuff that you pronounce wrong.
That's okay.
And there's these 2 other bands that. Oh, Wake is one of them. This band Wake released this album called Devouring Ruin, I want to say.
It was good.
Like that, dude. It was
that's
really
what it is. It's a good album. Yeah.
I was kind of blown away. I was just like, holy shit, this is amazing. It's very so like coming up in metal, I started pretty basic, like did my Metallica, new metal, System of a Down type of stuff when I was like really young. And then I veered kind of into like more popular, big production, like symphonic black metal stuff like Cradle of Filth and Dimmu Borgir, Old Man's Child. And then like the symphonic part kind of took hold and I started getting into like Rhapsody and Virtuosity and power metal bands like that, Symphony X and stuff. But then kind of out of nowhere, I just took this like hard left turn into like disgusting grindcore. Like just like give me that Pig Destroyer and the Locust and old Cattle Decap and just all that stuff.
This is note for note my own personal experience.
Yeah. and so that's kind of what got me into it. And then I fell out of music in general for a while. I was living in LA and I was still super young and just, didn't really have time to focus on playing music or listening to music much. But then when I did get back into it, it was like smack dab in the middle of like all this Cali death stuff that was kind of going on. And so I went to a record store. I had heard the song Scorched off of the album Noctambulant by Spawn of Possession. And I was just like, what is this? And went to a record store and bought Cabinet, their first album, because that's all that was available. And like immediately fell in love and then just started going over like, back catalog stuff of more extreme bands. Cephalic Carnage was one of those albums I got. Shortly after that, I also got Cosmogenesis from Obscura, which then led me into Necrophagist, and the rest is kind of history. But because I spent that like big window of time in grindcore, when I heard bands like Full of Hell starting to come back and like take this big role in like the metal scene, I immediately was just stoked, because that like chaotic high pass filter, just insane, like what it sounds like inside a schizophrenic person's brain type of metal is like exactly my cup of tea. So when I heard that Wake album, I was just like, dude, this is so sick. They're like a blackened Full of Hell. Like it's fucking, yeah, it was really good. So definitely Devouring Ruin from Wake, I would say, is one of the albums I've been stuck on for a little while now. Yeah, I don't know. It's my taste these days are rather eclectic. I got asked this exact same question by my dad and my brother over the weekend while I was having coffee with them. And my brother was like, yeah, I've been like, retrospecting on the Guess Who, like super sick band. And my dad is just like, yeah, I've been, listening to a lot of like blues, Stevie Ray kind of stuff. Like, what have you been listening to, Riley? And I was like, well, this morning I was listening to like these like weird full orchestra interpretations of like the Pokemon soundtrack. So like I don't really know. Really good, by the way. I think it's by this guy named Braxton Briggs. He just did this like I said, it's like a full symphony orchestration of some of the old Pokemon soundtrack songs from Gold and Silver, I want to say. Let me see. He did the National Park song, which like got me very, very hooked.
One of the reasons why Justin is called the metal detector is because this dude listens to every single metal release that comes out every single week.
Oh, yeah.
He'll tell us what's good, and we'll go from there.
Nice.
Yeah, I try to listen to like 60 or 70 albums a week, it seems like.
Oh, man.
Usually at the end of the year, I have a huge list. It's very hard to break down to like my top 10 or top 25.
Yeah. That's rad, man. You and Trevor Sternad should get together for. I feel like he's kind of in that same boat with his whole obituarist thing, where he just is constantly listening to just this huge amount of new music.
There's so much coming out every week. There's so much coming out.
Yeah, man. It's no shortage at all. Which is super cool to see. You know what I mean? Like I for one am a huge fan of where we are in the musical atmosphere, I guess I'd say, with like streaming being so readily available and all these new bands that like, if you can record something, you can upload it to Bandcamp, and like, it leaves no shortage of discovery. And I think that's, it's good and bad. Like it has hurt, the traditional structure of the music industry, where it's like, because methods of discovery were kind of limited to like very certain mediums and outlets, whoever the industry kind of chose to be a big band would then be a big band. Right. So it's kind of hurt traditional, music industry standards in that kind of way. But, it's created such a large pipeline for modern musicians and younger bands to really get exposed. And then you end up with bands like Shadow of Intent, who are like on top of the deathcore scene, that have like zero affiliation with industry stuff. They have like a booking agent and stuff, but they're an unsigned band. You know what I mean? They're pretty much self-run in-house.
Yeah.
Up until very recently anyway, because they eventually going that route, you just blow up to a point where it's like, we need a manager. Like we need someone to handle all this stuff. But
it feels like there is no underground anymore. It's all sort of rising to the top.
Yeah, it allows the talent to rise to the top and get the recognition they actually deserve, even if they don't go the traditional route.
100%, and I'm all for that.
You talked about streaming. Do you think Spotify and YouTube Music and all that good stuff? Do you think that's a detrimental thing for bands, or do you think it's a way for bands to use it to their advantage?
I think it's hard for metal. I think that's probably where it's the most detrimental. Because metal is already a very it's what is generally referred to in like the marketing world as a red ocean, where it's like, is this thing a blue ocean or a red ocean? Are you going to stand out and be like the one thing that the sharks are going to look at because you're the only thing bleeding, or are you just going to be one of the millions of pieces of meat in this red ocean that the sharks, aka the consumers, can kind of choose from? And so I think that metal is kind of in that thing where it's like there's all this blood in the water but not enough sharks, and so streaming is kind of detrimental to that in certain ways, because it's like, there's only so much money floating around. You know what I mean? Like the metal community is a small community, and you can't expect everyone to just buy everything that comes out. Like most people don't have those kind of financial means. And so it's tough, because you have this huge influx of bands and all these people contributing to the artistic side of things. But then on the business side of things, you have like a real shortage of means. And streaming, I think, again, it's one of those things where like it kind of both helps and hurts. You know what I mean? Like it helps. It helps the cream of the crop rise to the top. It helps all that stuff. But at the same time, it also hurts pre-established bands, because now you have, this weird middle ground where it's like you have sold enough records in the past to be considered a well-established band, but compared to more popular genres of music, your streaming numbers just aren't even close. You know what I mean? Like if a metal band does 10 million streams in a year on their whole like Spotify Wrapped type of thing, like that's usually a pretty good number. You know what I mean? That's like a good, like, oh, okay, cool. Like 10 million. That's kind of a lot. You get about $5,000 per million plays. That's like, it's a good chunk of change, I guess. But then you look at people, and those are like established bands in the metal scene. But then you look at like up and coming people in like alt pop, and they get 10 million streams in a month. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that's nothing. And it's just because it's just what people are listening to. It's nothing to say against metal, but like, every genre gets its time in the sun. And I feel like more extreme metal had that for a minute. Obviously early 2000s, the big metalcore, bands like Kill Switch and, Shadows Fall, As I Lay Dying, all those bands were huge, selling thousands and thousands of copies of records. If they were even still, you look at those bands streaming numbers and they're a step above a lot of other bands. And then you have like kind of on the more extreme side of things, the like Cali Death thing that happened like between 2006, 2010, bands like the Faceless and Deeds of Flesh kind of shifted directions around that time as well. Bands like Rings of Saturn kind of came to the forefront. So there was that as well, but I feel like now we're coming to a point where metal as a genre is kind of being redefined by the tools that are available in modern production. You look at a guy like Ghostmane, who is like started off in 2016 as just kind of like a spooky rapper, and is now trying to fill the shoes of like Marilyn Manson, doing this more like aggressive industrial, like he still has his, Courage the Cowardly Dog sounding ass rap parts where he's like, oh, but then he like kind of comes in hard with these like riffs and then these like very nu metal industrial sounding parts that he's like screaming over, and it's kind of setting a new precedent in metal being pushed into the mainstream. And so because of precedents that are being set like that, you then start to see a lot of these like more you know, I'm not going to say generic because I think that's a terrible term for anyone that works in the arts, but these more, you know, kind of mainstream pre-established like pop artists starting to like co-opt metal, like the look of metal into their, you know, their branding and their presentation.
Like Taylor Swift stealing Isan's cover photo.
Yeah.
You're right. Was that there's a girl Poppy? Is that her name? She was like super poppy. And now she's like, I'm trying to make a metal album.
Yeah, and it's go figure. Ghostman and Poppy are engaged.
Oh well, I definitely didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's like
interesting.
Like you know, it's a common trend for sure. But the thing is, man, is that it's like I get a little annoyed with metalheads on that front because sometimes it's like you can't see the forest for the trees a little bit because it's like, yeah, some more pop sounding artist is like, you know, blending metal imagery or metal branding into their thing, and that is like the end of the fucking world. But like then you'll see your favorite death metal band just like blatantly copyright infringe some anime and put it on a shirt and be like, that's the sickest shit, I'll buy that right now. It's just like, come on, like you know, like you can't have your cake and eat it too on that shit. Like either all copyright infringement is bad or none of it is bad. Like, you know, when Urban Outfitters, you know, or that's the other thing. It's like, yeah, so Urban Outfitters is selling Morbid Angel shirts. Who gives a shit? Like that's just more exposure for Morbid Angel. Now some dumb 16-year-old who has only been introduced to, you know, top 40s mainstream music is going to go into Urban Outfitters looking for a cute outfit and see a Morbid Angel shirt and be like, what's that? And like maybe go pop open Spotify and listen to Morbid Angel. And like if they don't like it, oh well, but like they still did it. You know what I mean? And like that kind of mainstream exposure is important, especially now, to keeping metal afloat. But I digress.
Well, the gatekeeping is kind of shitty in whatever it is you're into. You know?
Yeah, and
regardless of the field.
Yeah, it's gatekeeping is definitely not exclusive to metal. Yeah, now that I work in both metal and video games, I'm just like, man, why did I do this to myself? I just want to hit everyone every time I open my internet browser. But no, I think that yeah, there's gatekeepy shit that goes on, but it's a vocal minority. You know, and I think that that's important to remember and not let yourself get jaded or soured on anything that you're interested in, because it's like, yeah, you'll see shitty people, but 9 times out of 10, those people are the vocal minority, unless you're into black metal. Just kidding. But
I feel like the streaming thing also in how it affects metal at large. You were talking about what a glut there is of bands. You're talking about the red ocean, and you can't get seen and all this kind of stuff. I feel that, but at the same time, like one of the things that, at least from my experience, and it may just be because I have this myopic view, but it seems to me like metal in all of its iterations is a genre of music that not just encourages, but like breeds participation. I feel like the number of people who are in a metal band versus just or have at some point, or like they've made an effort, or they, you know, do something with friends on the weekend, or they participate in the making of the music in some way or another. My impression, may be wrong, is that the ratio of that in metal is much higher than it is in a lot of other genres of music. Not all, but a lot.
I'd say so.
And so Bandcamp lets me find some of these people that there's no way in hell I ever would have heard of otherwise. Right. And so that's another part of that mixed blessing that the streaming thing does is, does it make it, are there more and more voices out in the marketplace? Yeah. That's good and bad. I don't know. I just think it's a different dimension to add to what you were already mentioning. It's so complicated. Is it good or is it not?
You know what's funny about that is that it's like, in other genres of music, that problem has kind of been solved in so many ways. And it's funny because, again, it's a forest for the trees type of thing, where it's like a lot of times when you present these solutions to metalheads, it then becomes like impure and like not real and all this kind of shit. It's like, bro, hip hop and pop music have figureheads. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, this song or this album is being released under this person's name, and they're like the figurehead, and they do a majority of the singing or whatever it is. But then you have like 60 other people that contributed to the writing or the engineering or all this other stuff. And that way it's like your community stays intact because everyone gets a piece of what's being put out there.
Right.
But, you know, it's the kind of thing where it's like an article pops up being like, can you believe the new Beyonce song had 55 writers? That's ridiculous. It's so stupid. It's like, why has it even music at that point? And I'm just like, bro, like, you're missing the point of why they do that. Like, and it's,
I still get that visceral gut reaction though. Like I even when it's like stuff that I've learned more and I know better, or whatever, I still get those I'm a young pup metalhead visceral reactions.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, that's not how you do things. That's not, you know.
See, that's the thing about art, man, is like there's no right or wrong way. Like,
absolutely. And so like if you were to ask me my position on it, that's what I would say. But I still have that like gut reaction when I read some of those news stories or whatever.
Right.
It's like, oh, well, that's not. Oh, you mean you didn't write every single note on every single thing of everything that you ever did ever? Fuck you.
Well, the thing that's crazy about that to me as well is that it's like if you shift the involvement from behind the curtain to in front of it, it's a whole different thing. You know what I mean? Like if instead of being like, oh yeah, this one person had 55 people on the back end helping produce and engineer this song, because you can't really see what's going into that or like who worked on what or who's doing what, it becomes this like, oh, well, that's like false. That's not that's like, it's ingenuine. And it's not a Beyonce song because she basically didn't write any of it. But then it's like, if you had a band that was like 30 dudes, it's like, oh, that's kind of sick. Like, look, it's like an orchestra of metal musicians.
Look, it's Mushroom Head.
Yeah, like, oh, this is fucking Slipknot. Like, fucking, it's, you know, it's like it kind of becomes like this whole different thing. And I think that it's like it's weird how little tiny tweaks like that can make a whole difference in perception to a whole community of people. And it has always kind of blown my mind a little bit that I'm just like, why is it not viewed the same? You know what I mean? Like, everybody that's working on these pop and, you know, hip hop albums, it's not like they're just, you know, invalid musicians and artists compared to these guitar virtuosos. Like, they're all really good at something that they're doing, you know, be it production or songwriting or choreography or whatever. You know,
because I think it's just that they do it to make money, whereas metal is about passion. I mean, the money's the underlying thing, I'm sure, but like passion is there with metal and not so much with pop.
Yeah, I would disagree. I would say that a lot of pop artists that I have known and met are just really into the music. Like, they grew up listening to Michael Jackson and Madonna in the same way that people like us grew up listening to Metallica and Megadeth. You know what I mean? Like, I'm
talking about the 60 people in the background.
Oh yeah.
Not the front person. The front person obviously is passionate about what they do. Yeah. But the 60 people in the background.
Yeah, I think is it maybe more realistic to say that like all those 60 people didn't end up there on accident though?
Yeah,
like they ended up there because
that's
they
true.
give a shit. Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm driving at, is that it's like these people have careers in production and, you know, are involved in one way or another. It's sometimes you do end up with like the posse type of thing that was going on a lot in like early 90s, early 2000s hip hop, where it was just like 15 dudes on stage and most of them were just up there to be up there because they're homies. You know what I mean? Like they're part of the clique. They're like all up there because it's just a bunch of dudes having fun on stage. And like, you know, those people are still traveling with the band. I don't know if they're still getting paid like the main artist, probably not. But they're still there. They're still involved in a capacity that's less than artistic. But I feel when it comes to like production, especially with, you know, mainstream pop where there's like millions of dollars at stake, it's the same kind of thing with like, it's, you know, and this may be a false equivalency, so feel free to be like, you're full of shit. But like, I I feel like the same response would never be had on a video game, right? Like if I play a video game, it's usually the inverse response to me. It's like if I see a video game and it's like written by Joe Smith, produced by Joe Smith, designed by Joe Smith, I'm gonna be like, man, this game is gonna be a pile of shit. This is not gonna be good. Like, whereas if I look through the credits and it's like 200 people, I'm like, oh yeah, like some heart and soul went into this shit from a whole lot of people. I think it's gonna be super awesome. And so it's just weird that it's like when the same thing occurs in music, it's oftentimes greeted with a less than hospitable, approach. And I'm just like, to me, the more people involved in a project, the better it's going to be in the end.
And I've played a couple games that were one-man projects that were pretty damn good too, though. But then, then it's very rare.
Yeah, To the Moon was one of those. I mentioned that earlier in the stream. It's one of my favorite games. You know, if I ever I call that game my emotional palate cleanser. If I'm ever like feeling like just like stressed out or like blocked up or something like that, I will just like go play To the Moon over a weekend and have myself a good fucking ugly cry to myself and just be like, all right, I feel better. I feel like I got that out of my system. I can just kind of like, reset a little bit. But yeah, that game, mostly one person. I think his name's Ken something. I can't remember his name, but yeah. And then he did a couple games after that. The bird game and I can't remember what they're called. They're not as good as To the Moon.
So we've talked about video games. We've talked about your love of D&D, playing that. You've talked about music. What other geekery are you into that people might not know about? I'm
a food nerd for sure. I will sometimes spend hours in the kitchen doing stuff. I am a huge anime manga nerd, but I feel like that's kind of public knowledge at this point. I'm a giant weeb. Like for the longest time, my promo photo was in front of like a Berserk wall scroll. I like my entire neck is a Berserk piece. So it's I wear it on my sleeve, sort of. I wear it on my neck. I like doing like Gundam stuff. I like building models, really, of any kind. I don't do it as much as I should because I don't really have space for it. That's the one thing with building Gunpla and doing all that kind of stuff is that it's like, well, I could build this and then put it back in the box and have a gigantic stack of boxes in my closet, or I could build this and then put it on display, but then I have to like have a shit ton of shelves or like a glass display case or some other thing that has a footprint. I like the way you have it, Justin, where it's like you have all your
shelves.
You have those wall shelves for your pops. That's the way to do it.
They sell them at IKEA for like $15. They're great.
I got to get on that train for my Gundams because I have like upwards of a dozen of them just like sitting in boxes right now because I'm like, man, where am I going to put these?
I have a few in boxes in the other room too.
Yeah, I have.
We all do.
I have two that are on display right now that are like right to the right of me. But other than that, it's like my first one and my most recent one. So one of them is always there, and the other one is getting cycled out pretty regularly. But yeah, into what other weird nerdy shit am I into?
You mentioned food, cooking food. Are you into like watching food shows, that type of stuff?
Not really. My wife got me fucking sucked in to the Great British Baking Show, which
my wife watches that.
Dude, and no offense to my British fans, my lovely limey friends. I fucking hate British media, like, and oftentimes British food. The first time I had English breakfast, I was extremely disappointed. I was like, the meat is good and the beans are good, but why are there steamed mushrooms here? What is this bullshit? Like, it's like, why is everything just unseasoned as shit? Like, every time I've eaten in England, specifically, not the British Isles, because Ireland has great food, Scotland has great food, some bangers and mash and some haggis and all these kind of weird stuff. But then I'm like, but England has like curry, which they stole from India, and like fish and chips, which is less than great in any kind of fucking presentation. So I'm just like, can't stand British food and British media.
80% of the British Empire existed to steal food from the rest of the world.
They spent all those years conquering the world for spices, and what do they have to show for it? But British media as well. I shouldn't say British media. There's a lot of really good media that comes out of England in the form of like television and movies, and some of my favorite actors are British actors. Gary Oldman, for example, like one of my favorite actors of all time. But British comedy, I'm either stupid and I just don't get it, or like I hate it because it's not funny, and I don't know which one it is. It's like I'll watch stuff like The Mighty Boosh, and just it's completely lost on me.
I watched a fair amount of British comedy, and I watched only just a couple months ago. I checked out the first episode of The Mighty Boosh because there were people in it that I like, and I didn't get it at all.
Yeah. It did not resonate with me when it was on Adult Swim. I was just like, what? Okay. I'm the moon. I'm old Greg. All right. Okay. Whatever. It's like, it's either super, super dry, which I can appreciate a little bit more. You know what I mean? Like stuff like Monty Python, where it's like, if you're not paying attention, some of the jokes will just like fly right over your head. And I can appreciate that a little bit more, like Blackadder with Rowan Atkinson.
Yeah. He's great.
That one was pretty good. Or like Red Dwarf is also like
for my money, Red Dwarf is the British sci-fi show of choice.
Yeah, for sure.
Not Doctor Who. The Doctor, they can all go jump in the TARDIS together. Red Dwarf was where it was at for British sci-fi.
Yeah. Red Dwarf is great. Blackadder's great. Monty Python has its moments. I feel like there's a lot of Monty Python that I don't vibe with, but that's because it's just slapstick, and like British slapstick is so weird. Like it's not presented in the same like over the top American way that I'm used to slapstick being presented. I feel like the Benny Hill chasing people thing is like a perfect representation of like what I don't understand about British humor. And so, yeah, a lot of the times
it's that music they have to put behind it too.
Yeah, but so when my wife started watching the Great British Baking Show, I was just like, ugh, gross. And then like Noel Fielding from Mighty Boosh ended up being one of the hosts, and I was just like, ugh. But then like slowly but surely, just because it was like on in the house, I would like find myself being like, oh shit, Ruby really fucked up that souffle, and then I'm just like, what am I doing? Like,
my wife watches it. It's her, like you said, it's what she watches to relax and like sort of refresh herself, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And it's definitely got that, it's done. It's very well done. It'll suck you in if you're, I'd find myself like coming upstairs to grab something real quick, and then just like, before I knew it, I was like on the couch being like, oh my God, look at that. That's disgusting. Like it was, so there's, it has that magnetic thing that I feel like a lot of cooking shows have, but, long answer short, no, I don't usually watch cooking shows. I will buy cookbooks that are like themed around things. Like I have like a Final Fantasy 15 cookbook because a big staple of that game is making meals and cooking, and Ignis and is like, I've just discovered a new recipe, like all that kind of stuff. So I got one of those. I have this cookbook called the Necronom Nom Nom.
Yeah.
That's like a Necronomicon cookbook. It's
That's
all
amazing.
like,
Can't believe I slept on that. I had that idea. Me and my wife thought of that idea 15 years ago, and I wish I had not slept on it.
If you did it, I would have bought it. And a friend of mine got me a Breath of the Wild cookbook.
Interesting.
Last year that has like, I honestly, I hope she's not watching this because I'm about to let one fly that like I have not even touched that cookbook yet because it is so overwhelming. There are so many fucking recipes, and like they range from super simple to like gourmet chef type of shit. And I am by no means in that higher tier of cookery. Like I don't have enough stuff in my kitchen to be able to do that. It's like there'll be like okay, so for this dish, you need this, rocket ship part to mix your things together. And I'm just like, word, I fucking don't have one of those. So yeah, I haven't touched that one yet because it's intimidating, but I have it. But that's usually how I do cooking stuff when I get a wild hair at my ass and get super into the kitchen for a couple months. I'll usually just like fly through some cookbook that I have that's themed around some nerdy shit I'm into.
That's
And
cool.
I just got Dave and myself like a Disney World cookbook, all these recipes from the parks. I'm like, that's what I geek out on. I'm gonna try some of those now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to get in there and decide what I want to try first.
Yeah, it's always fun, man. It's always fun. I try to do stuff that like I've never done before. That's kind of the thing with it for me, is that it's like it becomes meditative at a point. I think that's why I do most of the things that I do. Is that it's very meditative. There have been times in my life where I was a little bit more athletically inclined. I recently did just start training again, but then coronavirus happened. But I did martial arts for a long time. I was into like rock climbing for a couple years, and the thing about those particular activities that always drew me in, swimming was another one, is that it's like the only thing you can focus on is what is directly in front of you. Like I have pretty bad out of control anxiety when it comes to a lot of things. It took me years as an adult to learn how to like sleep in the dark because my brain just goes. So finding things for me that allow me to engage in that like meditative type of thought of like all I can focus on is what is directly in front of me are things that I find myself getting like super sucked into. And that's why it's like I will build models or play video games or cook food or do martial arts or go climb a rock, because it's like all you can think about is what is directly in front of you. And I think
we can all relate.
Yeah.
I think we can all relate to that.
Yeah.
Are
So
we an anxiety-riddled bunch? Is that?
hell yeah, we are. Yeah.
Aren't most geeky metalheads?
Yeah, I was about to say, nah, man.
Yeah, right.
We play video games and listen to music derived about fantasies of murder because we're totally normal, mentally healthy people.
All right, man. We've taken a lot of your time. Do you guys have any last questions you want to ask?
When can you give us an ETA on what was the name of the other game y'all are Rise of the Betrayer? That's the one I'm interested in.
We have something coming up in April for that game, and then we're trying to shoot for like a July window, but there are a few things on the back end of that game that have recently become kind of problematic. So
That sucks.
yeah, it's kind of up in the air right now.
Fair
but
enough.
we are aiming for an April, a cool thing for that game coming out in April, and then a full release of that game coming out in July. But we will see if we can stick to those deadlines.
Are your game's going to be exclusive to Switch, to stream, or are you going to like try to get them on Switch Store or something like that?
No, we're gonna. I mean, Anton Ball is the port to the Switch is already in the works, and then we want to get Rise at least on the PlayStation Network, but ideally on Game Pass as well. So, yeah, definitely have plans to port those over to consoles. It's much less than you might think. It's like you pay for a development kit, you pay for a publishing fee, and once you have both of those things, you can pretty much just pop it up there. So
Very cool.
yeah.
I'll
Is
definitely
it
pick them
easier to
both up
get
on
on-
Switch.
No, I mean,
Yeah. Is it easy to get on the Game Pass? I mean, that's where everybody wants to be because, like, you get discovered there, basically. It's like Spotify for video games.
yeah. No, it's not that easy. It's usually, you have to get approved by Xbox ID first, and then you can upload to, like the Microsoft Marketplace, and then to actually get on Game Pass, there's a few ways to do it. Sometimes it's who you know, sometimes it's greasing the right wheels, sometimes it's it's just a fortunate happenstance that Jeff Keighley was going through internet games and was like, that looks cool, put it on Game Pass. It's
That Jeff Keighley.
That Jeff Keighley.
the ruler of all video games.
Battling Gabe Newell for the crown. Yeah. Could you imagine those two guys in like a fist fight, just like in a like on a mountain of money, just like two dragons fighting? Like,
I remember when he got to start on like G4 back in the day, just like the nerdy guy, just talking about here's my game review.
Yep. Fucking good old Gaben also has some humble beginnings with his just doing game design, Mr. Valve, and now it's like, oh, you want a video game on a computer? Use my program. I collect 30% of every video game sold on here. Guys in no shortage of financial means. So, yeah.
Well, Riley, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. It's been a blast. Anytime you're open door, you're welcome to come back. Anytime you want to come hang out and talk geeky shit, we'll do it, man. First of all, let's talk about where people can find your band, Allegaeon. So I have right there on Instagram, it's Allegaeon Official, and on Twitter, Allegaeon. And check out the website. You guys are working on new music. Check you guys out on any of the platforms, or go buy the albums, go to Amazon, wherever you buy your music, go support.
Oh, yeah.
And they want to find you, they can find you.
Hey, that's me.
The underscore. I make sure I got it right.
Yep. Yeah, and then my Twitter handle is all hail Riley. Usually that one's a little tougher to find.
Okay, very cool. I know I've seen you on Twitter. You're very it's very cool. You're very vocal about shit, and
yeah.
So cool. I love watching that, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Before we move on, let's see. You can find us on the interwebs at Metal Geeks, msrcast@gmail.com if you want to get a hold of us, and metalgeeks.net. You can also find us at esonetwork.com, where you can find all the cool shows that make up the network. Check us out there. We're on all the platforms. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Music. We're on Stitcher, all those places. Apparently they're changing. I just read an article. They're changing it from subscribe to follow soon. So that's something interesting. And we'll go with Justin next.
Yeah, you can find me as @ComicalJC pretty much everywhere. And check out the show I do with George and my buddy Andy at mindfudgecomedy.com. Also available on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and everywhere.
And we'll go with Mr. Brittle Dave next.
I find me and my artwork at Red Viking Dave on your various social medias. And starting in April, if you are in Texas, specifically around the Austin area, I will be spending the 2 months, April and May weekends. I'll be out at Sherwood Forest Fair selling artwork out there as well. I will be fully vaccinated by then. So
will I.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much. It was a fucking blast to have you on to talk about all this geeky shit. Like I said, anytime you want to come back, man.
Absolutely, dude. Thank you so much for having me. It was a super fun one.
It was a blast, Riley.
Yeah, man. Well, one last thing we always have to say is
keep it metal
and keep it geeky.
Hell yeah.
Thanks, man.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.